All right, now welcome to day 12 of the 12 days of realism. This is the last day, right? And you'll see we're not all the way done. And that's because this is a lot of work, right? And there's an enormous amount of stuff that you got to do, not to mention just kind of working through the problem as you go. So in this video, we're going to look at how we turn this this digital sculpt and the texture, and we apply that and we get that all the way into Marmoset. And we're going to get this somewhere around 50% of the way there. We're going to have a lot more room left to do some stuff at the edges. We're going to need veins. We're going to need to go in and massage the actual pupil, the iris itself, probably use some photo reference, but you're going to see the general process to set this up and to get you moving and get you started, okay? And I want to remind you that mastery is not magic, it's process. If you learn the process, that sets you free, and that gives you the power to make the decisions and to produce the work that matters for you. All right, so enjoy this last day. Make sure you head over to GameArtInstitute.com if you want to learn more about what we're up to, and hit the courses or the blog to see either the courses that are relevant to you or to see the rest of all of these days. All right, let's get to it. All right, so the journey to getting this into Marmoset starts with these two models that you have built. You've built basically the sculpted iris and the in-game or in Marmoset model. All right, now the dilemma that we've got that's going to be really important is that the shape here is different. You notice this is actually really flat, if not actually slightly concave, whereas this is round. And so how are we going to get this, all of this geometry to bake onto this rounded surface without it actually becoming distorted, right? And if you think about looking through it through a lens, I'll just tell you straight up what's going to happen. This little iris, when it's projected onto this curve, it's not going to be this. It's going to expand in size and become much larger. So we're going to make sure that we have a procedure in place to kind of shrink that back in, but it all starts here. So make sure that you have exported your low res, and I've already exported this a long time ago, and we're going to make sure that you've exported your high resolution. So you select your high resolution, you export that as high res. All right, so in Maya, we're going to come in and we're going to import in our low-res OBJ. Okay, and let's just go into our perspective view. I'm going to immediately go into Mesh Display. I'm going to soften all of those edges. And then we're going to, I'll look at it from the right view, and I'm going to select just these faces in the front, right there, because those are the only ones I really want to have UVs in. In fact, maybe just to make things really clear, let's select the whole thing and delete those. Back to our faces, and there we go. Okay, pretty solid selection. So we're going to go into Create, we're going to go into Planar, we're going to make sure that we're going down the right axes and project. Okay, looks good, but there's a problem. So I'm going to come into Texture, I'm going to turn the checker on, and you can see the stretching that happens on the side. It's a big no-no in this case because we'll have some displacement, some things happening. So the solution to that is you come over into the UV editor, right? And I'm using the UV editor workspace up here at the top. And you're going to go over into the unfold section and open that up, and you're going to use the unfold button. Simple as that. As soon as you click that, it's going to fix this. And for us, in this case, this is pretty rock solid. I don't need to do anything else. So put this into object mode. Let's kill that checker. And this is our model ready to go. So we're going to select that. That's our FBX, low res, done. But now, as I mentioned before, we have some distortion happening. We got to deal with that distortion. So let's go back into our right view, and what we're going to do is select all of these faces that are part of the cornea, and we're going to scale these in a bit to help with that distortion that I know is going to happen. And right now, I'm not going to adjust this. I'm not going to do anything kind of major. I'm going to leave it kind of distorted just like that so you can kind of see what we're going to encounter. And then I'll export this. And we'll call this export 3. Cool. All right, now let's get this thing into Marmoset and let's see what kind of problems we're going to encounter. So I'm going to bring in the FBX, the low res. There it is, the low res with the UVs, and no, that's the OBJ. I always get these guys. Low res FBX. There we go. All right, now we're also going to bring in the high res, which we exported out of ZBrush a while ago, and that's going to be as an OBJ. It's going to take a little moment to bring that in. And then if you want to, just to be kind of clear that it's there, you can apply this material because the OBJ doesn't come in with it. So we can turn that and just make sure that we've got, that we're seeing it. Okay, and we are. All right, so now we need to project the high res onto the low res, and to do that we select this little bread icon, and we're going to grab and drag the high res there and the low res into the low res. Okay, and I'm going to hide the high res because we don't need that. I'm going to show the low res. We're going to go into the baker, and let's just select where this is going. So we're just going to go into the texture, and we're going to go into bake working. And there we go. Save that. That way it knows that's our file. All right, good deal. Go into our baker. Pretty much all we're doing is the normals. Let's just bake this thing. Now, as soon as this is done baking, it'll take just a moment. We're going to then plug that bake, that normal map in, and you'll see the problem that we have. So let's select our bake, our material, go into our surface normals, and we're going to go into the bake working normal. That's the one. And there you go. Okay, now you can see the problem, but you may not have really been paying attention to it. How big is this iris? Or I should say this pupil, sorry. How big is that pupil in comparison to what it was inside of ZBrush, or what it is inside of the low res that's actually sitting there? If we turn this off, you see how it's much different kind of conversation here with this. This is the normal map being applied to it. I'm like, why does that look like crap? It's because let's just create a new material and take our roughness and take this over into a specular. There you go. And we'll just assign that in there so we can see that a little bit more clearly. There you go. So you can see the size of this is very different than the size of our low res with that normal map. The pupil just gets enormously dilated because it's being projected onto the sphere. Magnification. All right, so how do we fix that? We fix that by bringing in a mesh that has distorted UVs. So as you saw here, we distort the UVs of this, and we shrink these in because Marmoset's baking makes it larger. So then we use the UVs to bring it back to size. And the question is whether or not, we need to gradiate the edge of that, or if we're going to be okay. So here we're going to come in. I'm going to kind of close this baker here for a moment, and let's just import all of our other elements again. We're going to go into the eye, and hopefully this will load itself up. Model. And let's bring in the low res, the iris UV3. That's the one that we want. All right. So this is got this material kind of attached to it. Ignore all of this. Let's just throw that material on there because it's not going to look good on this distorted UV. You got to know that right off the bat. And then we're going to import the high res again. You could also just duplicate it inside of Marmoset, but I'm going to just do it step by step for you so you can kind of see each process, and then we can apply that new material to the high res, create another baker, and we'll bring the high res into the high, we'll bring this iris UVs into the low, and let's call this baker baking distortion and distortion, right, like that. There you go. All right, now once you've got that done, now the next thing for you to do is, obviously, we're going to turn the visibility off of the other one. I'm going to turn the visibility off of the high. And ultimately what we want to do now with our baking distortion is make sure that we're creating the right map for it. So we want something that's kind of separated, and I'll call this bake, iBake. And then we'll call it iris 3. Save that out. That way it's all kind of listed right there. And then we will go into our baking distortion. We'll bake this out. Again, only the normal map's the only thing that we're really sweating. That's the only thing that we care about. Now, if you apply this right back into this material that we have here, as you'll see, I'm going to select the new material. I'm going to bring in that one. It's called the Iris UVs 3. You're going to look at this and it's going to be like, well, that didn't do much. I'm not quite sure what happened. Okay, but we don't actually know how this is working out until we apply it back to the original UVs. That's kind of one of the important components here. So we're going to go back to our normal UV, the one that's going to go in game, and this is the one that's visible. And we're going to apply that new normal map to it. So it's this Iris 3. There you go. And you see how it shrinks in. Okay, but there's a couple of problems, in case you're a little eagle-eyed, there's a couple of problems that you'll notice that are going to be relatively important. Okay, if we just click this, you can kind of get a sense out of it right away. You see, the edges of that are no longer matching up with the edges here. And why is that? Well, our UVs pretty clearly demonstrate why that's the case, and it's because we really only scaled in this side. Okay, but we did achieve the goal of making the iris a little bit smaller. Okay, in relative speak, right? In terms of the relative width or diameter, I should say, of the pupil, the entire iris area. The pupil is smaller. But now we got to go back and we got to adjust our UVs a little bit to really make this kind of work. So let's go into our edges. And I'm just going to scale like that. Maybe be a little nicer if I... So I'm just double clicking on those edges. There you go. All right. And I'm going to keep most of that pupil relatively small. Okay, now we're going to go into our object mode. We're going to export this. Let's export this selection. And I'm just going to go right over the top of that FBX. Let it do its export and do its thing. Okay, and then Marmoset kind of pulls these in as entities. So we don't necessarily need to do what I'm about to do right now, but I am going to delete that and I'm going to import that again to be uber clean about this with you and so that you get a clear sense of it. We're going to bring that in. And again, the UVs all look like crap on this one, so I'm going to assign this new material, this baker, and let's just get rid of that map in there. And we're going to go back into the baking distortion. Everything stays the same, so we just bake this, but the UVs have changed now. So we use the UVs as this kind of moment. Come on. That was pretty quick. Oh, it would help if I put my low res in there. That's why it was quick. Bake it. There you go. Now you see it kind of opened up and spread itself out a little bit more, and we got nice clean elements in there. Let's select this. Let's select this, and I'm going to just say apply. There you go. Well, there we go. Let's just leave that nonsense alone. Let's go back into our baker over here. We're going to turn, oh, because we're looking at our original over here. I'm like, why isn't it working? It's because I had that eye on. Off. Ah! All right, come back into your low res. We kind of pretty much already see that the solution is there. We have solved this for the most part, but let's go in and be really clear about it. Let's bring in our eye icon here. This is what it looks like with that little distortion step built into it. Now, if we come in here and we go back to that original, let's say, I think if I remember correctly, it was the working bake. You see the difference, right? So this distortion step really helps me get a better result out of the iris and everything else. So I can continue to the next step of setting this up along the way of Pete Zoppi and get the parallax done. So in order for this to work next, we're going to have to go into normals and we're going to turn this into a parallax mode and we get this height map. So let's go in and build this height map in Photoshop. And it all starts with the actual map itself. So let's go in and bring in our iris 3, right? Because that's the one that's got all the distortion and all the elements that we kind of need to translate properly. We're going to duplicate this. We're going to call this height iris, and we'll call this height. All right, now we're going to create a new layer. I'm going to select a circle, elliptical marquee, press shift to kind of pull this out and constrain it. And there we go. Voila. All right, now we go into the gradient tool. We're going to use the radial gradient. And you want to make sure that you're going black to white. So by default, it's not really set to white, but it might be set to here. And I'm going to show you the problem with this first. So if you come in and you go kind of at the center and pull out, there you go. Now we can go here and let's just exit out of that, and I'll just fill this with white in the background. There you go. We're going to leave that in there, and I'll save this out and save this as iris 3 height. All right, then we're going to bring this into Marmoset. We're going to load this into the height map right in here. Iris 3, where's my height? All right, now I get to go in and I get to do a whole bunch of cool stuff. But one of the things that you might be noticing, like, see, that's pretty neat, right? But I have a problem. Do you see it? I have a problem at the edge. So using this parallax and this depth, everything here is shrunk in and stretched at the edge. And the reason why it's done that is because inside my height map, I'm not actually going from 0 or from pure white, so we should say 100, to a slow gradient in here. I'm actually going from 100 to probably about like 80. And so that jump in just a couple of pixels causes a problem in there. So the way you can deal with that is you can come in and say lower the opacity here until you get a softer gradient, but then you start to lose things all along the way. You can paint over it, or you can just do a better job with your gradient. Make sure that your gradient is all the way at white at the top, and then as you come into your gradient, you just don't pass that border. You don't come all the way out to there. You just come out into the center and you go right to the edge. Okay, if you do that, you're going to be in much better shape. And you can adjust this even further, you know, moving the gradient and moving it this way and that way. But let's just cancel out of that. Let's save this. I'm watching up here to see when it's done. Up here at the top it says saving 0%. Done. We come into Marmoset and it's already figured it all out. So there you go. And it's also fixed the edge. So now I can come into my depth and I can use this a little bit more classically to just go in and give me this beautiful, beautiful behavior here. Okay, so that's the basic setup of this. There is more that I have to do, such as establish the color, and then I've got to bring the cornea material in to add this kind of translucency to it and get you the wetness, the basic wetness, right? There's a lot of steps to this, and I'm again just showing you the basics to get you moving and working. But the next thing that we've got to look at is how you do the texture. So let's get ourselves into ZBrush, and the advantage that the systems that we're going to be using is we need to get some kind of texture out of ZBrush. That's going to be the primary thing. We've painted it in ZBrush, and we need to get that onto this is our de facto working layout, and we need to get it to apply here and somehow or another get all of these little pieces to match up. So that's going to be our trick, and it's a bit of a, we're going to adjust this. But the thing that you got to keep in mind about it is, this is production art, and there's a process, and it's games, and, we're using it for real time. So I'm not building a system that's like dead on, and we're just trying to use tools to help us get there and systems that help us get some cool results relatively fast. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to go all the way down to its lowest resolution, and I'm going to come over into the UV area here, and I'm just going to use ZBrush to extract this. And I'm going to make sure that my preview, depending on where it is, you might have done it where your piece is facing up here. You need to set it down like this and hit store, because that's how the UVs are going to project. And then I'll just project a planar UV, just like that, in a 2K map, because that's what we're using inside of Marmoset. So it'll work out just fine. Okay, now if we morph the UV, it really, all it's kind of done there, and you saw it kind of build, it's like it just took the UV and projected this way. So what's on the back side also gets put on the front side. And that's cool. I'm cool with that because we don't really care. We just need to get this out. All right, so we're going to go all the way up. There we go. And then close our UV section, and we're going to go texture map, and we're going to say new from Polypaint. Okay, so there's our texture, new from Polypaint. We're going to clone this. And then here we're going to take it and we're going to export this and make sure it's over here into the texture. And we'll say color blue 2, because this is my second round on that. Okay, we get ourselves into Photoshop. I'm going to duplicate this normal map, because that's the normal map. That's the de facto that works for us. iView, and let's say albedo. And then let's import or open our color blue 2. Copy that and paste that in directly into our future albedo. And I'm going to drag some rulers down here to help center me. I'm going to go right there for the bottom of that, and then right there. All right, so what I've done is established where's the pupil, where's this little sphincter muscle of the iris, and then where's the iris. Okay, and I only need to do it in one because it's a circle, so it's going to work across all of them. We'll come into our other one, and I want this to just work straight. So I want to Shift and Alt and scale that in till it's right there. Okay, and it's not going to work straight. So, but we'll be able to manage this. Okay. Now, I need to go in and start to extract some pieces. So I've got the radial here, and I'm going to come out, press Shift. Let's grab a little bit of that, and I'm going to go as far outside for this sphincter muscle as I can and try to get it centered. Although it doesn't have to be. This mouse is a little tricksy. Come on, mouse. Ugh. I tell you, this is the thing I do not like about. I love the pin. Okay. And now I'll go into Select, Modify Feather. Feather at 10 pixels, probably fine. Control J to put that up on top. And then we'll just modify this one, Shift and Alt, and get that to move out a little bit like that. That's pretty rock solid. Cool. Okay, and then now we can come in. Let's look at just this, and I'm going to let's use the Quick Select tool. Where is my Quick Select tool? There we go. That's where I got confused. Quick Select. It was already there. Nope. Make sure I'm in this one. Okay. New layer. And let's just make that black. Okay. The reason why we wanted to use the Quick Select is so we got some nice little detail on the edges there. Kind of important. All right, and then let's get our rest of our pieces in here. I'm going to go into this, and let's just delete, click to delete, click to delete, click to delete, and click to delete. Okay, it looks like it left a little border around there. And you can always come in and okay, and let's go in and select this kind of color, and we're going to make a nice little, let's move that down below. There we go. Now, if you want, you can come in with the eraser, and the opacity, let's set the opacity at 90. I don't want to fuss with that too much. Just get in real quick and kind of erase this so it doesn't really show up. It's a small little consideration as we're kind of going. There you go. All right, there's lots more for us to do in terms of getting all kinds of the iris, not the iris, but veins and all of that kind of element. But this is a really good base for us to work with. We have the pupil right here on top. We have our iris and the sphincter muscle between these two kind of working quite nicely. And then we have, you know, the background right there. And we've got, of course, our guide so that it directly matches our normal map. And then the last thing I like to do is just go in and really check, actually, is it matching the normal map? So what I'm going to be evaluating is I know that this is right here and this is there. So I'm trying to see, like, you know, how does it line up? So I'm going to come into my iris and let's go into that one. And let's set our opacity a little bit low and make sure that we're lining up, right? And if we're not, we need to make our adjustments. So I'm going to move this up a little bit. Not up. What is it? It's almost like it's rotated. There you go. That feels better. Okay, it's not entirely everywhere though. Again, we didn't have dead center when we did that, so we're off a little bit in some of this. There we go. I'm going to have to make this a little even. And it's a little off. Let's turn snap off. And if we want to now, we can go into liquefy to make the rest of this kind of work. So there we go. All right, set our opacity back to 100. Set all of these guys back up. Did we mess anything up with that? No. There we go. There we go. All right, now we save this, and it hasn't been saved, so it's Iris 3 albedo. Let it do its thing. And then we'll come into Marmoset, and we'll go in this little eye. In fact, let's go here, and we'll say Iris. Yeah, let's say Iris. Or that's really just the texture. Albedo, we bring that in, and let's find our Iris 3 UVs at the albedo. And there you go. Now, as you do this, you know, it puts that specularity way up. So I'm just going to turn that off so we're not kind of dealing with that. And then let's just see if we're matching. So, da, 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 da. So we're a little off in the color. And that's something that we would go back and kind of see if we couldn't figure out a little bit. See if we couldn't adjust that. I think there was a problem with the layers, actually. You may or may not. I don't think it's transferring the actual newest texture to it because there was some issue when we were dealing with the texture itself on that. You can kind of see one of the problems that we're encountering right there. I was doing something in the layer system, and so we'll just kind of move forward with this, and then I'll go and work that and fix that later. This will give you kind of enough for you to work forward with here. So as we move that, this is moving in and out and having a pretty cool result for us. So now the next thing for us to do is to come into our Maya scene file, right? And this thing's all smoothed out, and we're going to Control-D, duplicate this, and we're going to create the reflection here. So I'm going to just scale this a tiny bit, not much more than that. Okay, and that gets exported. So I'm just going to come in and export, and I'll call this the cornea. The UVs may or may not be relevant here, so let's say cornea, iris, UVs 3. But we've kind of done a really good job of mitigating that at this point. Now we're going to come in and import that. And let's say iris 3 FBX. There you go. Now we're going to create a new material. And we will assign this to it. Let's just say apply. And the key thing to making this work is coming all the way down to transparency and saying add. So you go all the way down, and this little transparency thing, you click this little guy and you say add. Not dither, nothing else, just add. Bring that in, you create an add in there, and then the next thing you do is you come up into roughness, and let's switch this over to gloss. And in roughness, you know, this is what it's trying to figure out. It's just blurring that or not. And eyes can be pretty clear in reflection in there. If you want, you can get some element of, well, we didn't really include it, so yeah, let's just leave it at that. Let's go in and change our metalness to specular. There you go. That'll do a little bit. Give us a little nicer result. And then the other thing that we want to do is that just gives it a little bit better is we'll go into this gray. This is a Trick Pete demos. You just turn that a little bit lower. And then everything's going to be a little less intense. And you can kind of ramp this up and catch just the highlights of it. So it's a great way to modify, you know, without... It's like two different levels. It adjusts the range at which specular really starts to show up, and this gives you a little cleaner representation of what that eye looks like. Okay, so with that done and said, let's go into, we've got our cornea, let's call it cornea, and there's probably some other things that you can add into it, but we're essentially done. You know, we've got a nice kind of interesting result in there. Let's go into our iris. We can establish what the depth is for that and how our eye is going to work. And now the next thing is for us, we've got our materials here. We've got our models here, and our models, they already exist. They're already FBXs that are already out there. So the big thing for us to do is to come into our iris, and we'll export this file. So I will export this and go into projects, and I'll say iris. And then I'll go into my cornea, and I'll export that, and I'll say cornea. Okay, so I've loaded up the model here inside of Maya. This is the original one, and we just need to fit the eyes to this. So I'm going to import the eyes. Let's go into our working document here for face, eyes, and we're going to need to load in both the cornea and the low res. So let's find our FBX low res, the one with the UVs. Not the distorted UVs, we want the normal UVs. So this is our guy, this is the one that needs to go. Okay, and it comes all the way down here at the bottom. That's totally cool. Then we're going to come in and we're going to import the cornea FBX as well. So both of those go right in, right on top of each other. That's great. We don't need to do a ton here. All we're going to need to really do, I'm going to group these guys. I'm going to call this eye. And let's call this left. Okay, then we're going to move this up into his left eye. And let's go into classic. Scale these guys down. You want it to kind of fit snug. About like that. And then in. And let's make sure that, there we go. And yeah, there's going to be a little caruncula in there, if I remember correctly. All of that stuff, and then, yes. Scale it in ever so much until I start to see space. There we go. You don't want it to get too big. I'm starting to see a little too much space on that side. All right. That looks good. Now we've got this one here, so Control D and just move this guy over. Or if you really want precision, then you're going to, I press Insert, and you can press X to kind of snap it down here to the grid. And then you can scale it in the negative. Now either way, when you do this, you're going to have to make sure that you freeze transform. So 0.522, voila. There you go, you got both eyes. Okay, so, and we will call, well, which one's left actually? That one is his true left. So let's call this one right. Voila. And let's get rid of that crazy number in there. Okay, both of these we're going to go into the actual modify, freeze the transforms on this so that there's no weirdness as we go. Then we're going to come into our file here into Marmoset, and I've already kind of loaded in the mentorship, the one that we've kind of been building with the peach fuzz and all of that. And let's see if this works. We're going to go right, and I'm going to say here, export this selection, and I'm going to say I right, and all of this, it's all grouped, it's got multiple models, it all should work and transfer straight in. And if we want to just test that out real quick, then we just do it. So we'll come into Marmoset, go into our eye, let's go into our models, and where is the eye? Right, FBX right there. Great. Comes in quite perfectly positioned. Now we haven't done any caruncula. There's a lot of things that we haven't done here now. And remember early on in the 12 days of realism, I told you my goal here is to get you a win, but I don't want to delude you into thinking that this is something that just happens super, super fast and there's no, you know, it's just like, oh, Ryan's magic. No, Ryan's not magic, and mastery is not magic. Mastery is process. My goal for you is my goal really for this is to help introduce you to process, to start to see, you know, how when you start to get a little bit deeper into this, and if you can continue to bring your anatomy and all of the beautiful stuff that you've spent your skills, your life kind of developing, don't give that stuff up. You can achieve some really cool results. So where did my left go? Right up there. I've been doing this so long, I'm a little punchy. I'm going to bring in my material, so I'm going to import in that those projects. I think I put them in projects. Yeah, there's my cornea material. And then let's bring in our iris material. Great. Okay, let's go into our eye. Where are they? Okay, which one's which? Would be nice if we named them, right? If you come in, if you come in, there you go. All right, let's take a quick look-see and see. So the group there and the one that's eye low resin, nicer named, that one is the one that's the cornea. So we'll go into that one, and I'm going to apply the material to that. We'll go into the other one, and we'll apply the eye cornea to that. Then we'll come into our top one, and we'll apply the eye iris to that. And we'll go into our top one, and we'll apply the eye iris to that. Screech! Now imagine you're in a car and the driver just hit the brakes and everybody lurches forward and we're like, what the? And there was a squirrel crossing the road. And we're sitting here going, dude, all of that for this? So we're looking at this eye. Look at that, all of that work. And look, ugh. What's going on? All right, quick. All right, now, I don't want you, I'm not going to leave you here with these kind of crap eyes. We didn't do all that work to get this. And we do need to go in, and you got to develop your skill and your talent. And, you know, I shouldn't say talent. Develop your skill, your capacity, and really kind of, when you're painting the eyes, it's a painting job. And so what I'm going to do right now to kind of speed that along and show you kind of a simple process for it is I'm just going to go grab some photos, and I'm going to pull those in and use those to augment what I already have. So you can just grab that image as long as you've searched and they're large enough images, then you'll be in okay shape. We'll just put those up at the top. And again, I'm just saying eyes close up. These images are amazing. I think they're right here. I'm going to grab this one, copy the image, paste that one in, and that I don't need to see, but we can go to the next one. There you go. That's a really good one. Copy that, paste that in. This is too much from the side, too much from the side. Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? Just blows me away the way these work. Okay, copy that in. Now, there's a ton of shading information mixed into this. There's a, that's not the one we want. There's a ton of stuff that's going to screw us up mixed into this. But what we're really looking to do, oh, I keep doing the wrong thing. Copy that, Ryan. Paste it into there, Ryan. Good job. All right, so lots of shading information and things of that nature, but all we're trying to do is just find something that's going to augment what we have a little bit. And so we're just going to try to find something that's going to, you know, add that extra little je ne sais quoi. I'm going to kind of pull this back here and move this into place. And then how does this line up? It's too small. Ditch it. Okay, next one. That one I really like. Oops. Make sure you're selecting that one. And I like to pull it behind the iris. And then we can zoom scale this one out a little bit. But we're having a bit of a problem top and bottom, so I'm going to duplicate this and then just rotate it. There you go. Now we can go in and kind of fade a little bit, and all we're really worried about is the iris. And ultimately, we've got a crap left and a right side, so I'm going to duplicate that again and then rotate that around like that. There you go. And then I'll erase that out. Let me set my opacity at 100. And then set our opacity a little lower. Okay. And now we're getting a little repetitive. So we'll see if that kind of shows up. Let me move that right to that anchor. And then I'll pull this down like that. Okay. Switch that over a tiny bit. There you go. Great. All right, so, you know, we've kind of loosely hobbled together through Photoshop something here. Let's just merge all of those so those are all set at 1. I'm going to press Shift and get myself a nice little selection there. And I'll go into Select, Modify, and feather that. Feathered 10 is fine. Control Shift I to invert, delete everything else. And yeah, that'll work. And then we can just take this and scale it into place. Okay, we do not want to screw with the iris. So that's going to be something we've got to be a little mindful of as we go through this. So you could always come into this, go into the Filter, Distort, Sphere Size. And if we just set this down to 50, and you can go in the negative for sphere size. So we go to 0, and then we just pull it in ever so much. There you go. And Control click. Yeah, that's a little bit closer. So that might actually just be what we need. Now we got to set ourselves into some blend mode. You can try some overlay, and then just take your opacity way down. And what again, all you're trying to do is get color and some variety into this. Okay, now, will that work? Will that be enough? Let's save this and see. So we're going to save it out, and then we're going to go into Marmoset, into our file, and and we'll go and just refresh that. And look at how much more interesting those eyes got. by having a little bit more, having some photo reference kind of pulled in to help augment that. And if you wanted to, you could go in and try a couple of these different ones to see if one in particular really helps kind of sell it. But you saw the general process for going in there. And all we're trying to do is just get a little bit of love and find that blending mode that really works. So overlay, kind of like hard light. What does color do if we go to hue? No. Saturation? No. Color? No. I mean, it's kind of interesting, but no. Hard light or overlay? Overlay shows a little bit more. Yeah, overlay gets rid of that, the extra little bits, the lightening of it. And let's say screen. Let's try screen real quick, but those are some really white eyes. It's going to start to look like glaucoma or something's creeping in. Yeah, that's a little rough. So we'll put that back. Add an overlay. And it should, oh, as soon as it saves. Come on. There you go. All right, let's get ourselves back into Photoshop and let's add another layer in here and actually just get in and do some painting. Let's take a look at some eyes again, a little bit of a close-up, and just see if there is, you know, something that we can use to help us kind of guide this. And so I'm gonna see a lot of, let's do opacity of about 50. And I'm going to lower the draw size. Yeah. We got a normal brush. There we go. Now what we really need to do is just get in and, you know, start to massage this and make this look like what we want. So I'm reinforcing the blue, going over the top of all of this. Let's get rid of this. I don't know why it's not working right there. Something's wrong with the pin. There we go. All right, makes everything that we did real subtle, right? But if we overpaint it, then we can also just come in and start to, you know, we have an opacity on that as well. The primary thing that we're trying to do is give ourselves some control so that they don't look so crap inside of Marmoset. Okay, let's select that iris. Come back in and hopefully that material is saved out. There you go. All right. Now it's a little bit too green. Everything's too much the same. So let's grab some of this yellow right in there. And if we come in and look at some of our, not this, there we go. Let's see if we can bring that in. And I'm going to increase that a little bit, decrease the saturation, increase the yellowness. There we go. And then maybe this is a separate layer so that we can massage this as well. A little bit more global. Let's pick that orange right there. And then let's go in and get some oranges. Saturate that a little bit. Kind of that's the hidden mechanism. The hidden thing with eyes is getting that kind of, that brown in there. Let me get some of that blue and get rid of some of that edge. And then pull some of that edge into the front. Let's get some of that purple. And is that purple right there at the edge? Right there. Cool. Let's grab some of that black, and I'm going to, yeah, it's good and saturated, real saturated. Lower the opacity. That's going to do some good work on the reddishness. Just chew that a little bit. It's a little rough at the edge. Got to be real careful. Save it. Let us do its business. Get ourselves into this. Refresh. How's it look? It's looking more interesting, right? To me it is anyways. But are we getting the dynamicism that we want? Let's go in back to this. Make sure that that's refreshed. All right, and then back to some reference. See if we can calculate what's going on. Oh, it's a little darker. Yeah. So I'm going to grab all of... What happens if I get rid of that? Yeah, I'm going to grab all of these. I'm going to make these a group. So we're going to say new group from layers. We're going to call this the iris. And then that way I can go in and add an adjustment layer just to them. So I'm going to hit levels, and I'm going to darken. Or maybe what we would want to do is come in and do a little bit of a color or curve adjustment. Actually might be really nice. So let's get rid of levels. Alt click to make sure that it's only applied there. And then we can darken and lighten, or we can lighten and then let's just darken a little bit. In fact, let's go into our channels. Let's go red. There we go. I'm going to pull a little bit more red into different places. Let's go into our green. Let's see, we can kind of pull a little bit more, get a little bit more chromatic variation in there. I'm going to go high and I'm going to go low. No, that's kind of crazy. And then back into RGB. All right, and then check it out. Well, we got more color variation this way. So save this out and see if that color variation actually gets into our sculpt or into our model. There we go. Let's refresh it. I'm going to load it. Texture, iris 3 should be albedo. Yes, iris 3 albedo. All right, we're making small changes, but man, lifesaver from compared to what it was before, right? Now, the other thing we need to do is that eyeball in and of itself, you see how white that is? That's like a dead giveaway that there's a problem. So we got to be very careful of that white that's in there. If not, tamping this entire thing down and giving it all some element of pink. Now, this is a little bit overkill, but we don't want this to be overall white. So you got to fix that in the texture, and you can also fix it here in the material itself by giving the entire albedo some aspect there. But if we come into these eyes and take a look, you know, there's yellow and there's red. So let's get ourselves into this and just add a layer on top of this entire thing where this is what we start to do. And you can come in and with your brush, you could try a couple of different brush settings to kind of make this whole thing work. Let's get out of that. But for the most part, you know, we just need something that's got some dappling and some chromatic variation. So I'm going to set this at a little red, a little there. And yeah, and I'm going to be real, like, I don't really care what I'm overlapping in this particular instance. It's not really relevant just yet. Okay, now I'm going to switch the hue over to yellow. I'm going to increase that. I need that whiteness a little. I need that high though. Okay. So let's go. There you go. Get rid of any white that exists and try to just, I mean, the skin, and it's always this beautiful combination of reds and yellows. You know, it's a trick I learned observing odd nerdrum paintings. You know, how much you can do with just some reds and some yellows. So let's see what kind of beauty or trouble this gets into. In fact, I kind of want to take some of that beautiful yellow right there, and I'd love to put a little bit of that inside the eye. Just to see what it does. Save that out. Get ourselves back into here and refresh. Yeah, there. Now we're starting to get a little bit more life, a little bit more vitality. Probably we need to kill the color now. Still not there. Still not deep enough, rich enough yellows. You can see the hue just really, gosh. I mean, you know, this needs to get, I'm going to just grab it and duplicate it right on top of itself. And then I'm going to duplicate it right on top of itself again. And probably erase out the center. And the center. So I don't get too much of the crazy on that. Looks like I got a lot of erasing to do at the edges. Okay. Please get a little bit more extreme. Let's saturate that. There we go. Now, another big thing that's going to, I think, help us really make a difference in this, number one, we need to move the eyes. They're a little on the crazy side. And we need something that's going to kind of bump this up and add some crazy to it. But there's only so much I want to make sure that we really get into today with you, because my goal is to give you the primary steps. So one of the last steps that we really need to do is we need to get ourselves into Maya and make sure that these are positioned correctly, because he's looking cross-eyed. Okay, so that's not kind of working for me. And if we save this out, let's save this. Come on. And then while that's saving, we'll get ourselves over here into Maya and look at this shaded. It's a little tough for us to see exactly where these are facing forward, but if you come into each one of these and just rotate these out and try a couple of different angles. So try to rotate that by 5, and let's undo that. You need the entire group. So the eye needs to be rotated. Let's say 3. Oops. Let's center the pivot. Let's go into our modifier. We're just going to center that. And now we'll go in and set that to, let's say 3. We'll go into our eye right, modify, center pivot, and set that to -3. And I kind of feel like that's already a little off. And let's set that to, okay, that should be 0. There we go. So let's make sure that these are all zeroed out, and then this is set to 2, and this needs to be set to 2 as well. Confirm, because something weird was happening. Do. Okay. And that's actually not a bad idea for us. Okay. Check in. All right. Let's just export these right over the top. So I right, export the selection. We're going to say export right. And again, just export right over the top. Export left, export selection, And there we go. So we brought the eye in straight. It was sculpted straight. We brought it in straight, and then we scaled it in, and then we moved it out 2 degrees. Now, as we come in here, I always have this hard time knowing exactly when these things kind of refresh, so to speak, when we get these eyes to kind of move. So if you're ever worried about it, just re-import these things and see if you can get it to kind of move. So let's just go into import, and let's go eye, model, and we want the eye right. I keep looking at the wrong FBXs. So eye right. We got a problem, right? You know what the problem is, hopefully. If not, it's a simple problem. When we're working here, we need to make sure that we come in and we always freeze transforms with these guys. Modify, freeze transforms. Otherwise, what it ends up doing is it ends up transferring translation information. Let's go here. Actually, this is the one we need to freeze transforms. Freeze and eye left, modify, freeze. Okay, great. So we end up transferring translate information over into something, and it's like, well, but I was somewhere else, and so now the translation doesn't work. And it was basically rotating 2 degrees all the way from the bottom of the grid, which obviously is not going to work for what we want. So we go in, do this whole thing again. A lot of times out in production, they'll have scripts that do these things real quick and just make life a little bit easier. And there you go. You can see the eyes shifted as we were sitting right there. And that looks a little bit better. But when you're at all confused about this, the solution is you come through and just move these guys little bits by little bits. And I want you to just get to a point where you can kind of feel it. Let's go -1. Let's go 1. No, wrong one. Set that to 0. Eye left, eye right. Okay, eye left. 1. Okay, modify, freeze transforms. Eye left, modify, freeze transforms. Eye right, file, export selection. You can hear my little mouse in my carpal tunnel just creeping up. That little spring is my tendon dying a slow death. And if that was not true, it would be more of a joke. Make sure you stretch. Make sure you take your arms and you reach out straight as though you were just putting them in a T pose or hanging out on a cross, and go from there. All right, so we exported these guys out. Let's see, they're shifted slightly. Sometimes I've heard some people say set them at 5%. You rotate them out slightly and go from there. But this will work okay for now. Now, we're still getting a very kind of white tone in here. Specifically right in, this area. It's just really beat up. So we'll make one more effort to really help that side of this conversation. Although I am kind of interested to know how much of that is reflectivity or any of that stuff, and it doesn't look like it should be. So here's what I'm going to do real quick to just test all of this out. I'm going to create another layer here, and I'm going to go into an extreme color, and let's just go right there. Where's my, make sure you're in the paintbrush. Okay, save this out. And help me understand, please, why I'm not getting a better result right there on the edge. Let's refresh that. Okay, there we go. So the area that I need to be focused on, because the red is actually pretty good, but the area that needs focus is over here where the pink, the blue is. That's the area that's just it's not working for me. So I'm going to select the color there, and I'm going to just darken this. And as you darken, you should saturate. That's just a rule of thumb. So let's come in here, and I just want to beat that up a little bit. Let's go in there, and I'll just do slight modifications. Okay, save it. Cool. Okay, extend that. There you go. That's starting to look a little bit nicer, right? At least it looks nicer for me. And this is just one of the things I have to do. You might be, you know, just already graceful at all of this. But this is one of the things I got to do. I got to get in there and just do all this kind of crazy to just feel out and hopefully get this stuff to kind of work. So let's just save this out. There we go. Those are better, not so white. Obviously, a little on the cray-cray, but that's okay because, you know, we just come in and we're just trying to get an overall result. Now I'll go in and lower the opacity of that. And then all that stuff that I did back there is also going to show through. And then if we come over here and let's get, in fact, let's just do this the old-fashioned way. Shift, Control D to get rid of that. And then let's get ourselves a nice little edge. Feather, no, select, modify, feather. 10 is fine. Control Shift I. And, whoops, that's not what I wanted. Control Shift I. We're going to delete in the center. Okay, save that out. All right. Feel a little better, but now in order for me to take that further, we're going to have to get in and really start to work, I think, the normal map and really adjust that quite a bit. But I think everything done and said, you know, we've covered a lot of bases here with these eyes, and in terms of the 12 days of realism, we've made an enormous amount of progress going in here and doing some really cool stuff, you know. And I can't help myself, I kind of want to go in there and start to add some veining, and just to give you a little tidbit of this, and the veining on this side was like that. And I'm being purposefully a little crazy because I like to do things in as procedural a way as possible. So I'm going to make a mess, and then from there, see if we have a couple of tools that can, that was not good, that can help make this a little cleaner. Okay, so let's come in there, filter, no, select, modify. I'm going to contract this by 2 pixels. There we go, new layer, and fill that with the red. Okay, so we were able to use that and kind of shrink that in a little bit. Now I'm going to duplicate that layer, and on this first one I'm going to actually just blur this. Like that. Okay, and then lower the opacity of that one, and then add this on top of that, lower the opacity of that. And that's kind of interesting how that works. Save that out. And just see, did that suck? Did I get anything kind of interesting? Got a little bit more. And now the next step after this, and see it broke up the edges a little bit, tiny bit. The next step after this would be going in and giving it, just hitting the photo reference. Now, I'm not enjoying what it's doing right here. So, but I think we're in okay shape. Let's just hit the eye. Yes, okay. And yeah, it's right in there that it's getting it. Okay, I think we're going to be in okay shape. We've got our depth. Bring that in, bring that down, open that pupil a little bit more. Dilate those guys. There we go. Now, last thing I want to show you is, notice how I'm not getting a ton of dilation in there. Watch this next step. I'm going to show you how after you've got this, you can kind of futz with these a little bit more. So this is the albedo. I'm going to say we're kind of done here. So I'm going to open up another layer on top, press Alt, and come all the way down here with Alt pressed and say merge visible. And what that'll do is up at the very top here, it creates this just merged layer. That's what it's going to do. All right, I don't need to mess with the height, but I will need to mess with this guy here to some extent. So I'll need my normal map, and I'll need this one. Wait, where did it go? I need my albedo, and I need my normal map. And I just lost my normal map. Here, let's just close blue. Let's close our height. We don't need that one right there. There you go. These are the two that we need. These are the two maps that make a difference. So, and we have these two maps sitting right here on for us. So we're going to just close all these down. In fact, you can now just grab all of this and say, hey, let's make a group and just call this working. And there you go. Now, what this means is that from this normal map still matches this painted iris. Now, I want to make some modifications to this, so how can I do that? We can come into the sphere size, or not sphere size, come into the selection, and we'll just make a nice little selection right there. There you go. And now we go into a filter called sphere size, which you kind of saw a little bit earlier, I think. We'll go into distort, sphere size, and we can make this bigger or smaller. Let's set our opacity, there we go, that's a good one, 33 zoom. So see how you can zoom that in and you can zoom that out. And our problem is we kind of don't have the ability to open this too much. There's something going on. So I'm going to just set this at 100 and see what happens. All right, this is pretty wide, so I'm not a big fan of that. Let's set this at 50. And let's set our opacity there. Okay, and then you can dial this back, so that's 0 roughly, and then we come in and we're opening it at like 30. I want 33. Okay, there you go. That's just enough for me. And then I'm going to come into the normal map, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to come into the filter, distort, sphere size. It's set to 33, and the parameters are the same, so this will pull it the exact same amount. So what we will do then is come into this this layer, this background layer. We'll duplicate that right in over the top. Save this one, so we'll have both in case it doesn't work out. We come in here and we come back to our message right there on top. We save that out, right? And so now we're going to be able to just quickly kind of check this inside of Marmoset and see, hey, notice how it opens up a tiny bit, and it didn't seem to screw too much up. So it gives us a little bit more dilation room when we come in and do this, which is potentially kind of a nice thing for us to have. And I've talked for a long time here. Okay, so that wraps this up. We have covered a lot, right? Not enough, but we've covered a lot. And my goal here with the 12 days of realism was really to just get you moving and get you kind of seeing, and give you some kind of roadmap. Now, head over to GameArtInstitute.com. Make sure you go over into the blog to see all the rest of these. And then stay tuned to see what we do next, because all of this has been leading somewhere. And it's leading ultimately to a course that I'm developing. It's an expansion of sculpting the human face. And in sculpting the human face, we're just looking at anatomy and sculpting. But we're not looking at all these little nitty-gritty details and how we're going to, use sculpting and how we're going to use texturing and how we're going to bring all of this stuff together to create something that's realistic and looks, beautiful in the game. This is the thing that makes a difference in your portfolio. There are so many people out there that sculpt. There's so many people out there that will just, maybe just texture paint. But if you can do the entire pipeline, if you can get out there and you can create a realistic face that looks awesome, has great material, the subsurface scattering, the specular looks beautiful, you can see all the details, the pores, all of that stuff. You got all the bells and whistles. You're gonna have the hair, which we're gonna cover. You're gonna have the eye shields. You know, all these little tricks that help make a difference in your work. If you can do that and put that in your portfolio, it's gonna increase your chances of getting a job and make you more of a job candidate, which has really been my goal for the last 2 years. All right, head over to GameArtInstitute.com to learn more about this. Have an amazing, happy holidays. Thank you so much for being here with me on these 12 days, taking part in each one of these comments, leaving comments, letting me know what you think. It makes a big difference in my ability to make these videos and to give back to you. All right, take care. I'll talk to you later.